All right. Good morning, all. Welcome to the Vote Common Good podcast. It's a Tuesday. We get to talk politics around here. It's April 27th, by the way. The day I refer to as Second Shot Day. Little Mr. Second Shot here. I got the Pfizer shot, second one in my left bony shoulder. I was joking before we came on that they must have hit somewhere, found some muscle in this bony shoulder of mine because I'm not feeling any pain quite yet. But Rob, as you know, as somebody who's already well into his, full vaccinated life, I'm just waiting for all the response system in my body to start screaming, there's a protein that responds, that we would need to respond to just like it's a virus, which is how this vaccine works, the one that I got. So I'm waiting for my body to start shivering and quivering, and getting that together. Yeah. If you're watching this for the next, hour or so, I might go into deep chills right while we're speaking. That'd be sort of fun, wouldn't it? I haven't seen one of those videos yet.
Will you begin to morph into Bill Gates while we're on the air today?
That's right. My brain will just be taken over, and I will start saying all kinds of democratic talking points and nonsense. I won't be able to control myself. Well, hey, I am Doug Padgett in Minneapolis, standing up today on the 27th of April because I'm kicking the habit of sitting down. Been sitting down the last week or so on the podcast for all sorts of complicated reasons that have to do with my little studio down here. But I'm back up on my feet and joined by Rob Riots. And Rob, where do you find yourself and what are you doing?
I am sitting down in Fayetteville, Arkansas.
All right.
And yeah. I'm glad to hear that you got your second vaccine, Doug. Do you have any sense of like what this will mean for your life from here on out? Do you have like some, have you marked the calendar for 2 weeks from today to be like go to a restaurant or something? Like how are you feeling about all that?
That is a good question. I don't have something on the now I'm officially protected calendar. I should do that.
Yeah.
I was just planning just simply to look down on all the people who choose not to get a vaccine with much more indignation than I do, with just one shot of my arm. Just planning to see myself as more civically minded and loving my neighbor better than the rest.
Yeah.
But I think I could step that up a little bit and be.
Yeah. Vanessa and I got our second shot 2 weeks ago on Thursday. So we are now fully vaccinated. Wow. And so on Friday to celebrate, we for the first time in over a year, we went to our favorite art museum, Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art in Bentonville, Arkansas. And we had a wonderful time just wandering around the art museum. Yeah.
Did you keep a mask on, or how do they do that there in Arkansas?
Yeah. Well, our mask mandate has expired. And I, there's essentially kind of two groups of people that I find myself being really judgmental of at this point in my life. One of them is people who don't yet know how to use Zoom correctly. Because I just think at this point, like we all ought to be Zoom experts by now. If we're on a Zoom call every week and you still can't figure it out, we've got a problem. So there's Zoom noobs that still bother me, that are bothering me, and then people who don't wear a mask. I have a really hard time, feeling loving and gracious towards them. And there are a lot of them here in Arkansas. And I think. Well, maybe they've been vaccinated, but then I look at the numbers and realize we're way behind in terms of vaccination as a state, and so I doubt that all these folks have been vaccinated. So it's a tough thing. We continue to be presented with these new opportunities to love our neighbors and figure out what that looks like in such a divided society and culture.
It felt like an act of civic engagement today to do it. First of all, it was, the way the line kind of works and people punching your name into all of that feels something like voting or going to get your license tabs, which still is a confusing thing we have to walk into places to do. Going to the post office. I don't know. It felt like one of these big collective actions and activities. And so I really felt like I was doing my civic duty. Hey, you gave me a curious look there when I said the thing about the license tabs. What was it?
License tabs? That's not a phrase I'm familiar with.
Ooh, that must be a Minnesota phrase. Instead of calling it a registration tag, We call it a license tab. It's the little sticker that goes on your license plate that says that you've updated, you paid for your license, your driver's license, your driver license plate registration for that year. Yeah. We call them license tabs here, and other people call them registration tag. Yeah. So in the news that came out about Dante Wright's killing, the national media would refer to it as a registration tag, and we were like, we don't.
What are you talking about?
Here. We call it a license tab. Yeah. So that's what we do. Hey, let us know where you're listening in from, if you are, what you're doing, and where you are in your vaccination regimen. If you're on your way, if you're halfway through, if you're all the way through, we'd love to know about that. Rob, so much happening in the world of politics. Joe Biden today is going to give us some update on the advice about wearing masks outside after you've been vaccinated. So big news coming that after all the hard push to get people to wear masks, now the federal government's narrative is going to be, but if you're outdoors and with other vaccinated people, you don't have to wear a mask as frequently as you once did, which might stop the outdoor people that I walk with when I'm out and about. There's a number of, just people out and around. And some of those people wear masks, and I don't wear a mask when I'm walking by myself outside, like around a public lake. And that judgment that you might deliver to someone, in an art museum there in Arkansas, I picked that subtle little glare up from the people who have their masks on, like, what you doing? And I have been, when by myself and outside on a brisk walk or bicycling or running, I don't wear a mask outside. That might, so that look that I've been getting might, no, it's not. So you think the people who still want me to wear a mask outside are going to continue to do so? Yeah,
I was going to say, do you think the president's, if he ends up, is that for sure what he's going to announce today? Kind of loosening mask recommendations for outdoors.
Yes. He's going to give an update on CDC recommendations about mask wearing outdoors. So I can only imagine that he's going to say something that's changed, and I can't imagine them saying we now want everyone to wear a mask all the time. It seems like it's going in the direction of, here are the conditions by which we believe by the science that it's now safe to not wear a mask outside.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to see what kind of impact that has on folks, and if people will feel like, okay, this is reason to kind of relax a little bit, or if people will be so kind of already ingrained with that sense of like, no, I'm scared, I need to do this. It'll be fascinating to see what kind of impact that has. And I wonder long term, there's some, Japan, for instance, is a country where it's very common to see people wearing masks all the time, and has been for years. I wonder what percentage of folks will continue to be mask wearers when all this is said and done.
6% is my guess. 6% of the American population will continue to wear masks. I just think this country doesn't have it in us. I don't know, maybe you'll kind of keep one in the car if you think you're going to be in a place where where you're really unknown. I think it's going to be an interesting question. Like, is it because currently people have felt like I'm afraid of the virus, generally speaking.
Yeah.
I don't want to get sick. I don't want to spread it. That's generally what I think. I think going forward, people are going to say and feel things like, I'm afraid of those people. I think they weren't vaccinated. I think they didn't do the thing they could have done. I think they're the danger and the threat. So what has been in some ways this sort of shared experience by a whole country inside of a global community, I think it's going to start to fracture even more than it has been before between like we're putting together a Vote Common Good tour to travel across the border to raise awareness around migration, asylum seekers, refugees. And I think we're going to make a requirement for participating with us that you have a vaccine, that you've been vaccinated.
Yeah.
I know that the states are passing rules that you can't have a passport, but I think individual groups can say, hey, if you're going to do our thing, you need to have a vaccine. And I'm just a little concerned about what that will communicate if that's an encouragement and helpful and yes, we all should, or if it's going to start to create a real divide in the communities. Because I know a lot of families that don't vaccinate their kids for mumps, measles, chickenpox, and so on. And boy, when that word gets out that they're one of the non-vaccine families, they often feel the pressure from the vaccine communities and from the rest of us.
Yeah. And I think, this is a good segue into one of the news articles we're going to talk about today. But, it seems like there is there's a lot of people that are getting the first dose and not getting the second dose. So what do we do about, we've got non-vaxxers and we've got, the vaccinated, but what do we do about the half-vaxxers? Folks that have been, half vaxxed. It's
and are they going to declare themselves vaccinated? Yeah.
Yeah. What do you chalk this up to, Doug? Is this people just, procrastinating, being irresponsible, or is it they didn't like the side effects from the first shot and are scared of the second shot, or there's that narrative out there that the second shot is worse than the first shot? What do you think about this? And then how does this, what will this mean for the booster shot we're going to need 6 months from now? Are we talking 25% of people getting that at that point? Why do you think this is?
I think it all comes from the half caffeinated people, the people that come in Starbucks or wherever and they order a half calf. They just think, these are people of moderation. These are reasonable folks that aren't all in. They're the cautious types, the scaredy cats. I don't know. I'm someone fully committed to this vaccination. Now, I've never chosen a vaccination other than the tetanus shot, which I don't even know if that technically counts. But I think I had, the ones when I was a child that were forced upon us by our parents. I didn't know anything about that. I've never had the flu shot, not because I'm opposed to it, just because I don't know. I don't think I've ever had the flu, and I just never considered it for a moment that I would get the flu shot. But I'm all into this vaccine and ready to do it. And I was even feeling like, do I really need to drive all the way out to Waconia, our place where we got ours was like 20 miles away? Do I really have to drive all the way out there at this time in this, really isn't one dose of this going to be enough? I mean, I know what they say by the studies, but do they really know? I mean, I had that even rolling through my head, right? So I can imagine that people who are less convinced that it was important, just feel like, I can't get it this time. It's a little bit of a hassle. I'll go. I think the pressure came off for a lot of people to feel like you're half vaccinated, and maybe that's. And it's not that you're half vaccinated, right? It's that you're. I'm not totally sure of the science. We should really get an epidemiologist or somebody on here to really talk about if your body responds to it the first time to the protein. Your body reads that this protein is now in your body that it would respond to, just like the virus was there. Because there is no virus that goes in when you get the RNMA vaccine. So why does your body continue to respond like that with the second dose? How does that actually work biologically? So I think there's just a lot of general confusion, and people are like, yeah, I don't know. It's probably good enough. And I really do feel like when people would say to me, are you vaccinated, before this morning, when I got my second shot, I didn't know how to answer that question. So I'd make a joke about it, like the person that brings a half a pie to a backyard party. Do you can buy half pies at the grocery stores?
Yes.
Like a pre-made pie, you can buy a half of one. Yeah, we had a party one time in our backyard. A friend came and brought the half a pie, stopped at the store, walked all the way in,
chose a half a pie.
Chose a half a pie, which dollar per slice is actually more expensive.
Absolutely.
He bought the half a pie. So I would make a joke about something like that, like I'm doing right now, because I didn't know how to refer to, was I vaccinated? I am vaccinated, but I need to get a booster shot 4 weeks later, or maybe I'm going to need a booster shot 6 months or a year later, something else. So I just think there's a lot of general relief that people feel when they get the vaccine, and maybe they feel like it's gone. I'm worried that we're going to top out at 60% of the population, though. That's my fear.
I feel like was just gonna say, I feel like the folks that are, get their first shot but not their second shot are kind of like the vaccine equivalent of the folks who wear their mask but not over their nose. It's like you can, okay, I feel a bit of protection, but not nearly as much as there should be.
Yeah. Yeah. So look, this is the moment of our day. It was just over a year ago when the moment of sheer shock landed on a lot of us. I remember where I was walking outdoors when I was listening to a presidential news conference, and I heard the then president, now we refer to as the former failed, twice impeached, insurrection leading president, Donald Trump, in a press conference say, I've heard that light and bleach really does a number on this virus. Is there a way that we could shine the light or inject the bleach inside the person? I was hearing that live in my, I was listening to it. Because remember back in the day when you would want to turn on the news to hear an update from the task force or from the president about where things were in the coronavirus? That was just like a year and a day ago. When Trump said maybe we could inject bleach into the people. Well, that's back in the news, partly because a man in Florida was arrested for having thousands of bottles of bleach marketed as a COVID cure. And it had all the things and was trying to get people to ingest that into their body. So if you think that Donald Trump's nonsense was only bad for the psyche, is bad for the body. So this guy has been pitching and selling, or as I guess a news story like this should start, Florida man was selling such a thing, because that's sort of, anything that follows can then make a whole different level of sense. And it's still shocking. Dan and I were joking before we came on that if you were looking for a cure in 2021 for COVID, it's called the vaccine.
Right.
Like, my guess, I don't know, the people that buy this product were probably not going to get vaccinated. And they thought, what would be better is if I picked up the chlorine dioxide solution that's marketed as a COVID cure. Maybe I should try that before I get the FDA approved vaccine.
Yeah. Yeah. So, the folks that are worried about what they're putting in their bodies, through the vaccine are the very people who would be buying this, mineral solution or whatever it was called. Yeah. The miracle mineral solution. They're the ones who would be buying this. And, if you don't know what you're putting in your body, with the vaccine, how do you know what you're putting in your body when you're ingesting the miracle mineral solution? It is the Venn diagram there is there's a pretty big overlap in terms of people that aren't getting the vaccine but are buying the miracle mineral solution, which is used for industrial water treatment.
Now, when you read the story about this Florida man, they had thousands of bottles of bleach that they had sold. My guess is they had thousands more bottles that they hadn't sold. My guess is this was a DIY business adventure that didn't take off. It probably didn't.
I mean, all of us who have tried to sell stuff, we have boxes of books that we've written in our garage, right? We all have inventory left over from our
guys. He's just an entrepreneur. He's doing what he can. He's trying to hit the market at the right time. He's got those, Twins championship sweatshirts from pick a year that they didn't win. Hey Rob, do you watch the Oscars? Did you tune in the other night?
I was like the vast majority of Americans this year that did not watch the Oscars. I think that might have something to do with the fact that I didn't see any movies this year in the past year. Because of a global pandemic. And, when we were streaming, our attention span is not that long. Vanessa and I watch movies now. When we watch movies, we watch them in episodic format. We watch about 45 minutes and then duck out. But no, I typically have watched the Oscars in the past, but I did not watch this year, much like the vast majority of Americans, the worst rated Oscars of all time.
Yeah. And, you know, I'm not someone who's much interested in award ceremonies for any industry. You know, the people selling the Miracle Mineral Cure award ceremony, the Mary Kay award ceremonies, the Stryker Medical award ceremony at their annual conference. Why we allow the award ceremony for the Hollywood industry to become its own epic moment is curious to me. So I'm not much of a fan either, but I did happen to watch it this time, mostly by accident. I was watching something, it ended, it turned up on ABC, and I was like, oh, the Oscars are on. It was just in time to see Tyler Perry receive an award for his outstanding humanitarian effort. And I will admit this, I have not seen a Tyler Perry movie, so I don't know his filmmaking credentials. I mean, I know that they're very famous and very popular. People love them, so I'm assuming that they're top quality. But as a person, this guy is fantastic. Well, I can't say that I'm a fan of a Tyler Perry film because I haven't seen one. I'm a fan of him. They ran this little profile on him beforehand, 2 or 3 minutes about his background. And then he got up and gave this really great speech about how we're to live with one another. And like so many things in this era, it was captured by the political moment, by the racial reckoning moment, by the conflict that we feel with each other. He does this stand in the middle, which, by the way, stand in the middle for him isn't be a little bit of this and a little bit of that, be a half vaxxer, be a lukewarm, as the book of Revelation might remind you. He's not talking about that at all. He's saying stand in the middle so that you have access to everyone's. It was, I don't know if you saw the video, it immediately, popped up on social spaces. Really great. I just thought, what a difference of where we are now, where you can start to say as a society, we've been through a number of years, especially in the political sphere, that has been dangerous in its outcomes and threatening to so much that so many of us value. That this really felt like it was a fresh new moment. I mean, so I'm not sure that what he said was, all that stunning. His own personal story, told a great story about a person that he had an interaction with. But it felt like that kind of moment. And because I didn't have any expectations of how the Oscars was supposed to go, like I wasn't heartbroken about not seeing dresses or the gala or whatever it is that people were bothered by the Oscars, or the comedic introductions. I thought it was really a really great moment. Turns out, I didn't know this either going into it. MAGA Nation, the Make America Great Again crowd, hates the Oscars. Did you know this? There's an entire anti-Hollywood, Oscars movement among the MAGA Make America Great Again crowd?
Yeah, I would imagine, like, that doesn't come as a surprise to me. Given their kind of blame everything on the Hollywood elite. And, Hollywood is, just code language for liberal, Jewish, it's all part of that kind of dog whistle language that gets used by those folks. But is there a particular reason why the Oscars, as the celebration of, the movie industry, is a particular lightning rod for the MAGA folks?
I don't know. I didn't know this until just sort of paying a little bit of attention to the Tyler Perry, that, oh my gosh, the level of vitriol. And I'm not seeing it direct sources. I'm seeing people sharing what these folks are talking about, because I don't spend a lot of time dipping into the 33% of people that support the failed and twice impeached insurrectionist president. But the people who do, they're like, they are revved up. Now, my guess is those people also watch movies. Like, I'm just saying that most movies that I have seen, and I see a lot of them both on little screens in my house and big screens in theaters and makeshift drive-ins. I watch a lot of movies. They're not exactly pitching a liberal, let's include everyone, let's go to nonviolence, let's take people's guns away, let's open the borders storyline. I mean, have you seen blockbuster movies? They're kind of the opposite of that. So this idea that industry, I mean, I want that industry to tell those stories. I want that industry to tell stories of the coming together of America and the healing of the hearts and souls. And I want all of that. I don't think that's really what Hollywood is up to. So somehow the people behind it are seen as villainous, and yet the product that they put out is, I don't know, doesn't seem to me to be something that that your classic Republican or MAGA crowd is should be all that bothered by. But who knew? Yeah. Hey, speaking of that, did you see that they're moving ahead with this recall of the California Governor Newsom?
Yeah.
Unbelievable, California.
I know. Seriously. And the person who's kind of at the center of all of this is none other than Caitlyn Jenner. And in a very similar way that Arnold Schwarzenegger used him becoming the advocate for the recall of then Governor Gray Davis. Yep. Arnold Schwarzenegger, kind of became the face of the recall movement, so that then after the recall was successful and there was an election for who the new governor was going to be, Schwarzenegger had already built a platform to make that happen, which, allowed him to beat the likes of, Gary Chambers and is it Gary Chambers, the guy who played, was on Different Strokes.
One of the Hollywood elites.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. There's a whole bunch of people that ran for governor. And so now Caitlyn Jenner is doing that same thing, following the Schwarzenegger model in using the recall as the opportunity to launch her gubernatorial campaign, and is all in, and has apparently a whole host of Trump alumni who are running her campaign and advising her. And so it is not out of the realm of possibility to think that Gavin Newsom may be recalled and replaced as the governor of California by Caitlyn Jenner, Trump supporting Republican, which is just mind-boggling in every way.
It is just so confusing that the Republican expression in California is going to go for a transgender person is shocking. That there's enough Trump-like Republicans in California for someone to win is mind-blowing. But it just reminds us how complex all of our states are, right? We like to use this language, red states, blue states.
No,
that's not an accurate description. I mean, it might be who's in control of the current legislature or state house, or who's in the governor's seat, what party is in the governor's seat, or who the state voted for in a particular presidential election. But states are full of all kinds of people. Every single one of them, even the most red of red and the most blue of, like, you put California in the blue, it's deep blue, safe blue. And yet this kind of stuff goes on, right? They needed 12% of the voting population to put together a recall, and they got it, right? Well, they're well organized during the pandemic, apparently. So they got this it is a couple of things California does, and as a non-Californian, take my opinion for what it's worth. They do this recall business, which I think is bad practice, that the population can decide to stop the ramifications of the previous election and redo it. It's got that parliamentarian feel to it that I don't care for. And the second thing they do is they use a lot of propositions. And unlike someone like me who uses a lot of prepositions. And these props that they do, people can vote on them as the citizenry to pass laws, as opposed to letting the state legislature pass those laws. They're sneaking away from a representative form of government to a version of government that is a direct democracy. And it's part of the direct democracy movement that a lot of people are big fans of. And it creates all kinds of havoc. We had a guest on the podcast yesterday, Young Lee Hertig, and she was talking about the Proposition 290 from way back in the day that people misunderstood and voted the wrong way because the way the language was structured in it. They thought they were voting for civil rights, and they ended up voting against them because of the proposition. So that's not only, it's not only that some of them are structured in a way that's odd, but this idea that elections don't hold to the next election cycle, that elections only hold until somebody stirs up enough chaos, and that the elections are not about electing lawmakers who then we can all use to use our vote to move out a lawmaker. It's asking individual people to make decisions about particular laws that I think drives down the level of informed influence that's going on in these issues. I don't know. Do you have any opinion about either of those things? I don't think we've ever talked about.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think that there is, I think there's absolutely a place for ballot initiatives. And what's really fascinating is I live here in Arkansas in a bright red state, which we typically have 2 or 3 or 4 ballot initiatives on the ballot each time we vote. And what happens in this bright red state that Donald Trump won over 60% of the vote in, and we have a state legislature that is, as Republican as it gets. When more progressive ideas are put on the ballot, such as medical marijuana or raising the minimum wage, they win at the same percentage that like Donald Trump won. They over 60%. So, it's interesting here in my state that the ballot initiatives have been used to move forward some things that otherwise never would have made it through our very conservative legislature.
Yeah.
But I think I think that ballot initiatives can be used effectively, but I think it's important to use them in moderation. And, I think there is some genius to the representative form of government where we, instead of having kind of mob rule, which is the kind of the characterization of the direct democracy thing that you hear at times, that you just let's elect thoughtful, wise, good people who will put the common good, use the common good as their voting criteria to make decisions about, about our laws. And we've got a system that if something goes wrong, you can replace them when it's time. And there should be procedures to replace them before it's time if need be, such as, an impeachment process. But, it seems like with kind of the recall efforts in California, it seems like there is the opportunity to constantly foment that.
Yes.
And it could easily become a tit for tat kind of thing, used, for payback. If 12% of the voting population is all you need to trigger a recall, I mean, that's the base of either party. You could gin that up, no problem. Especially if immediately following an election, you keep your campaign apparatus in place and use that to force a recall. Like it's there, you could see a scenario where there could be no end to this, that there's no ability to govern because you're constantly trying to stave off, having a recall. Now, all that said, Gavin Newsom maybe he's brought some of this on himself.
Sure. Sure.
allowing himself to be photographed out to dinner, while there are
Be a better
stay-at-home
governor. Yeah.
Yeah, there's stay-at-home mandates in place in California, and doing some of those little things that undermine the trust that people have in you, and then also infuriate your opponents and motivate them, while at the same time not giving your supporters a reason to loudly and boldly support you. Like, man, when Gavin Newsom sets up a stay-at-home order and a mask mandate and closes everything down, and then is photographed in a restaurant with lobbyists not wearing a mask, boy, it's really tough to, provide a robust defense of that, no matter what your perspective is.
Yeah, look, I'm 100% with you on that, and that should come up, in my view, in re-election conversation, not in recall election. I mean, there should be a category for impeachment, and it should rise to a certain level. And like, the twice impeached president, they should face that if that's the case. But this sort of general dissatisfaction that's going on doesn't seem like a great idea to me. Hey, you know what else doesn't seem like a great idea is that 46% of Republicans apparently disagree with the Chauvin guilty verdict, which was just a week ago today. Rob, think of that. 1 week ago today, we were not even sure that the verdict was going to come back in a short matter, or what the verdict was going to be. It's only been a week. And this is how naive I can be sometimes as someone who's also a curmudgeon. It surprises me. I thought there can't be very many people who would disagree with this verdict in the country. Derek Chauvin believed he was guilty. He tried to strike a plea deal. Like that he was going to be found guilty was something that's, was reasonable to all 12 jurors, so many people. To find out that in a poll from last week that 46% of Republicans, which now, is going to make it 25 or some percent of the population, disagreed with the Chauvin verdict, it shows that there is something that has binded together the Republican Party that just views the world through such a radically different lens, right? I mean, there are a lot of things that people who are pro-police could say about this, like all the other police officers that testified against Derek Chauvin, that, use your bad apple theory here, right? As opposed to rotten tree, rotten soil theory, which is what a lot of us who believe there's systemic racism say, that the soil itself is rotten and the tree comes from that rotten soil, not just an occasional apple. The whole system of policing is broken. But just use your bad apple theory, as opposed to, no, that person should not have been found guilty on those charges. And for all the sense that so many Republicans want to talk about law and order, it's a little shocking to me how quickly they will turn on a jury and how quickly they will turn on other police at a Capitol if they don't get what they want. Like, they're only for law and order, seemingly, when it goes the way that they've already determined, right? That it's what's supposed to bring about the outcome that they have, as opposed to trusting the jury outcomes. Now, I'm not saying one should always trust the jury outcomes, because oftentimes trials are set up in ways that are extremely unfair. But it's just harder to be we're for law and order, we're for all of this, until it doesn't go our way. Like, if you want to critique the entire system, feel free, and then you can hold every verdict with a little bit of suspect. But to be flipping your switch back and forth, were you shocked by this 46% number? Did that strike you, or does that seem like it fell in line with what?
I mean, it's disappointing. Is it shocking at this point? No. Because half of Republicans or more think the election was stolen. A significant number of Republicans think that there is a cabal of pedophiles who are trying to run the country. There's majority of Republicans don't believe that climate change is a reality. I mean, there's a group of people here that are disconnected from what is real and are living in an alternate universe with an alternate set of facts that they cling to. I spoke with a family member recently who was kind of bemoaning the state of education in America, and was talking about how under President Biden now our schools are teaching such evil things. And I mean, it was like, wait a minute. Biden's been president for like 98 days. Yes, he has not changed the curriculum in our schools in that time. And, it's just, there is such a propensity for folks to, to believe things that simply are not true, and to believe things even when their eyes tell them differently. I mean, we all could watch the video of Derek Chauvin kneeling on George Floyd for minute after minute after minute after minute. And there's people who can watch that and say, well, it's justified. He deserves it. Blue lives matter. Yes. And it's so disappointing, but it's not shocking.
Oh,
it's shocking that it's not shocking. Like, that's the thing that's like, we are at this point now where there are people who are so disconnected from reality that, like, we just go, oh yeah, makes sense.
I guess I just thought it would be 23%, like half of, not 46%, like somewhere that number starts to become, you get a room full of Republicans and half of them, like, what? Yes, of course,
unignorable.
There's going to be. In fact, we need our system, every society needs the outliers that don't buy the current story that's being pitched, right? It's a very important part of a healthy society to have the contrarian expression to every idea and every notion. No one should just be going along and but at some point you don't want this level of rejection of these things that are normative. That's the part that gets me. It's not trying to create groupthink or trying to say everybody needs to go along to get along. None of that. Just something this clear was this moment where people could have said, okay, I don't believe that policing is systemically broken. I don't believe that every officer is out to do harm, all that. But in this case, look, this was really, really bad. They couldn't get to that point even in this case. Normally, even the exceptionalists, right, the people that want there to always be an exception to what's the norm, will have the one-off that they say, okay, that's the the case that proves my rule, right? You have to have one of those. There's always the exception to the exceptionalist. So when someone's exceptionalist to the normal thinking, then they have one of their, like, granted, that's a straw man. Don't bring up Derek Chauvin when we're going to talk about policing, because yes, that one was that's corrupt cop business. That one is just, that's Rudy Giuliani bad kind of thing. That they're doubling down on that one. Like, which situation's going to get you? Which is it? What criminal in your world is too much for you in a position of authority? That's the part that gets me, because you would think that the pro-police crowd, and I don't know anyone who even thinks that the Chauvin case was wrong. I'm trying hard to think in my life who I could talk to. So if someone knows someone, let us know in the comments or send us an email over at podcast@votecommon.com. Well, I would love to talk to someone, because this is the one that you get to say, don't bring up the Chauvin case, because that one, yes, granted, he was X, Y, and Z. They're not doing that on this one. I guess that's what gets me.
trying to think. I'm trying to think if maybe a sports analogy works here or not. I think what we've got is a situation where things are so politicized.
Are you going to use a cricket reference again?
What's that?
Are you going to use a cricket reference again?
Yeah, exactly.
As a sports.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think things are so politicized that there is I think there's a tendency to view everything through a political lens.
Yeah. Okay.
And an unwillingness to let your opponent win anything. And so, I think there's Republicans who view the Chauvin trial as a political conflict. And if Chauvin is convicted, that is a political loss for them and a political victory for their opponents. And things and this is the sports analogy, things have gotten so chippy, like sometimes in games, like, you'll see in a football game or you see in a basketball game, they'll talk about, things are gotten chippy. Like everybody's taking every little thing that happens personally, and the tension is escalating as a result of that. I think that there is some element of that to this.
So you're saying they're just rallying around that maybe push comes to shove. If this hadn't been, if Chauvin's conviction wouldn't have proven this larger point that people are trying to make out of it, they might come down differently. But the costs are so high for them to give up on this one. It's like, so you're saying it's more like hockey, as I understand it, than it is like, other sports where in hockey, you just send out an enforcer. If a guy slashes your key player, you send out a guy to check him into the boards and then drop his gloves and start punching to enforce that you don't do that to one of our players. That we're just taking everything with a, we'll take the penalty on this one because we're unwilling to give up this larger point. That actually helps me maybe think that maybe people are not looking at the facts here and saying, no, I think he was innocent, but hey, we cannot give up one single police officer's bad behavior because that means, and that's a real sign, of our society and probably a real sign of weakness. If you were in some negotiating situation with someone and you were consulting someone on their negotiation patterns and you're like, you seem like you're fighting over every single bit here. Are you in a weakened position? Because it's either it's just bad habit or it's a real fear that things are going to go away. Yeah, that's helpful. Hey, let's talk a little bit about Kevin McCarthy, can we? Because this guy is not going away, and we'll talk about two other things that aren't going away. Kevin McCarthy is the current minority leader in the House of Representatives. Very much wanted to be the Speaker of the House when the Republicans had control of it, and had a couple of blunders. They kept him, and he's trying to recoup himself. He's the cat that came out and said, I called Trump before, while the insurrection was happening, before he made his statements, and told him he has to stop this. These are his people. He's now, as you'll see in this video clip, unwilling to admit that happened. But then days later, he got up on the floor of the House of Representatives and said, Donald Trump bears responsibility for this. Now he's trying to recast January 6th insurrection, that Donald Trump was the hero who did the right thing to try to bring an end to it. Did you see this clip already? We'll play the audio for the podcasters and the video for people. This is Kevin McCarthy. He's in the news. He's on the news, Sunday morning news show with Chris Wallace on Fox News. Chris Wallace is going after him about why he continues to support Trump in this moment. And here's the leading Republican in the House of Representatives.
Continue to do so when Marjorie Taylor Greene says what she says, when Paul Gosar says what he says,
if they say something's wrong, look what I put out when I read what the caucus they wanted to create and what it stood for. I didn't sit back. We denounced it, and it did not move forward.
All right. During the Trump impeachment in February, during the trial in the Senate, a Republican congresswoman said this. I want to put it up on the screen. She said that while the January 6th riot was in full force, you phoned President Trump and asked him to call off his supporters. And according to you, she said, the president responded, well, Kevin, I guess these people are more upset about the election than you are. Is she right? Is that what President Trump said to you?
When I talked to President Trump about, I was the first person to contact him when the riots was going on. He didn't see it. What he ended the call was telling me he'll put something out to make sure to stop this. And that's what he did. He put a video out later.
Quite a lot later. And it was a pretty weak video. But I'm asking you specifically, did he say to you, I guess some people are more concerned about the election than you are?
No, listen, my conversations with the president are my conversations with the president. I engaged in the idea of making sure we could stop what was going on inside the Capitol at that moment in time, and the president said he would help.
I want to ask you a specific question about this, because there have been and are continuing to be investigations of what happened on January 6th. We'll talk about the commission in a minute. Has the president ever reached out to you since that report came out to discuss what you and he talked about in the January 6th phone call? And did you say to him, I can't because we're under oath?
No.
That never happened?
It's never happened.
And you would
never even close.
And if it did happen, you would agree that would be witness tampering?
Yeah, but never happened. Never even came close. Never had any conversation like that.
Okay.
Never even heard that rumor before till today.
Speaker Pelosi.
Okay, so here we have it. Here's Kevin McCarthy.
Okay.
Have you broken this down yet? Because I've been breaking this thing down in my head.
Okay, can we just
specifically? Yeah, go ahead.
Can we just begin at the end where he was completely flustered and had no idea that witness tampering question was coming from, and you could see the wheels spinning in his head trying to figure that out. That was it, and it makes you wonder if Chris Wallace knows something that the rest of us don't, but that was fascinating.
Yeah, that question's not going away. Did the president try to interfere with your current testimony?
Yep.
So what Kevin McCarthy said to the answer to that question was the most telling to the earlier question. So he says about that definitively, no, I did not have that conversation with the president about the witness tampering bit. When he was asked, did the president say to you, some people care more about this election than you do, Kevin? To that, he said, my conversation with the president is my conversation with the president. Later, Chris Wallace says, oh, did Donald Trump say X, Y, and Z to you? He says, absolutely not. So he's willing to tell us about conversations he did not have with the president. So he didn't answer that question with, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, Chris. Like I said, any conversation I've had with the president stays between me and the president. I don't share what I did or didn't talk about with the president. He doesn't say that about this tampering. He does say it about the conversation that he had. This is a classic tell, and why someone like Kevin McCarthy is so bad in the press. You can't say, I'm not going to tell you what I talked about with the president, and then 45 seconds later say, I will tell you exactly that I did not have that conversation with the president, right? That's the whole thing. And before that, he lays out this thing, this notion of, I'm a straight shooter. I tell people the truth. When Marjorie Taylor Greene and Gosart and these guys tried to put together that America First caucus, I came out, he says, look what I said about it. Okay, let me ask you about what you said about the president. I'm not going to tell you what I said about the president. So in that little minute and a half long piece, you see him making both arguments that simply prove the point that the president of the United States knew this insurrection was happening and said it was all about these people caring about who won the election. And Kevin McCarthy doesn't know. Yeah. Well, he doesn't care. He frankly does not care.
No,
that
people
are going to deconstruct this.
No, he does care. And there is one audience that Kevin McCarthy has with this interview. And and that audience is Donald Trump. Listen, the midterms are coming, and the Republicans are set to win big in the midterms and take back the House of Representatives. The Save America PAC, Donald Trump's PAC, which is going to be involved in the congressional midterms, has $85 million in the bank to spend on candidates that they support. Kevin McCarthy, number one, does not want to be primaried in California, where he's from, and have to stave off a Trump supporting challenger. And he wants to be Speaker of the House. And the way to become Speaker of the House is to be the Trump supporting guy who protects the president now, so that when his minions get elected to the House of Representatives, they don't turn on him, because we know that they would.
Because I guess the calculation is that the Trump wing of the party is going to have enough juice to actually win. I don't think they're going to. I'm willing to go on the record here, a very deep record. They hold me to, and I'll just say I was wrong. But I'm willing to go on the record. The Trump brand of politics, other than the fluke in 2016, lost in 2018, lost in special elections in 2019, lost in 2020, lost in special elections in 2021. It's a loser's ticket. The idea, no matter how much money that crowd has, that's the crowd that's going to win over the hearts and minds of enough voters to win the control of the House of Representatives, I don't think is going to happen. I think the economy is going to be too strong. I think this is going to be one of those elections where they say, well, this one didn't follow the conventional thinking. I think now we're going to get out and we're going to work our little hearts out to make sure that happens. But I think the conditions are set that Trump is still so toxic. Yes, I know that with 33 to 40% of the Republicans and the insider Republican crowd, he's really strong. I just think in a lot of these races that are going to be up for grabs, McCarthy is picking absolutely the wrong ticket to go down this route. And he doesn't care about his inconsistencies. You're right. He must be speaking to the audience of Trump and the Trump pack and all of that, which is just seems to me to be foolish, just politically foolish. Like, on what basis do they make the argument that ticket was a winner? I don't know.
But but we are, and then, I mean, you layer on top of all of this, the redistricting that's going to be taking place. There was an announcement yesterday from the Census Bureau about that. There's some states that are losing House seats, some states that are gaining House seats, but all of the House districts are about to be redrawn by the states. Republicans, and particularly in state legislatures, you find more control by the kind of Trump wing of the party, and which leads to crazy laws that happen here in Arkansas and Georgia and other places that have been making headlines over recent weeks. These are the people that are going to be redrawing the district lines in the vast majority of states, where and so gerrymandering these states that give Republicans an advantage. And then we already know historically that Republicans we can project that Republicans could very well have an advantage in the midterm if you look historically. And then to think that with Trump's super PAC, that he's going to be the one who's going to be picking and choosing which Republicans are going to be ending up in the House. There are a number of factors coming together here that bring about a perfect storm of a populist Trumpism that Kevin McCarthy could be completely marginalized, and the Marjorie Taylor Greens of the Republican caucus, could be the key players. And it is, this feels like a CYA situation with Kevin McCarthy to me. Like, he's looking ahead at what's possible.
I think you're too generous to McCarthy. Can I just say this is why?
Sure.
I don't think he's just calculating. I think he actually believes it. I think when he's with Donald Trump, he believes what Donald Trump says. I think he's more like Donald Trump. I think Mitch McConnell's like Donald. I think the idea, like, we've continued for 5 years as a country trying to say these otherwise principled people that are not bad people are just afraid. They're using leverage. They're trying to do power. They're trying to negotiate. At this point, literally, the guy is no longer the president. He's got $85 million that, like, Peter Thiel is going to spend more on Republicans getting elected personally than this. He's going to spend $1 billion. Like, the fact that we keep coming up with reasons why someone of this reputation and positional power still has to kowtow because he's afraid. I don't think it's about being afraid anymore. I think we've been reading this wrong the entire time. I think they were afraid. I think they're like, I like it. It's the way I want to go. I have no problem at all with those people, with what they're pitching being part of my brand. This is the thing. You look at Caitlyn Jenner running for governor and you think, you pick the Republicans in this period of time. It's because this is not toxic to you. This is not a problem for you that you're trying to solve. This is an asset. And that's the thing that's made me just lose my mind about Republicans. And as somebody who's tried to spend an entire lifetime giving Republicans, and especially Republican politicians, the benefit of the doubt, it's now to the point where you can't simply say, well, he has so much power. Like now he's literally a failed president living in Florida, and you still can't say the right thing? Like when he was president, okay, but now he's not, and they still come up with some reasons. So I'm just saying, they're in love with the guy, and they're in love with his ideas, and they're in love with what he's pitching, and that's the problem. There
you go. You might be right.
There's that. So if you go to vote for a Republican, if you are a Republican, people are, I think you just need to ask them, are you into this? Because look, like that you're some shrewd, like you're on Fox News with Chris Wallace, for crying out loud, and you will mock the Marjorie Taylor Greene America First PAC or caucus, and you will mock this accusation about Trump interfering, but then you're going to go silent on what the president says because you want the president. You want him. You want him. You need him. You love him. I don't know. This is just something else. So, hey, thank you all for being with us. It's Tuesdays. We get to talk politics all day instead of sneaking it in on the side. And on Wednesdays, we talk about faith. Thursdays, we talk about issues. This Thursday, we're having Diana Butler-Bass on to talk about her new book. Talks about Jesus. We're talking economics and science on Friday and news on Mondays. Lots going on. Tonight, our final installment of the threat of Christian nationalism. Kristen Dumais, Shane Claiborne, Stephanie Spalding, Christy Berghoff, myself are your hosts. We'd love to have you join us. Go to votecommongood.com. You'll see a place there to sign up where you can watch it in all the places where you watch this. And soon it will be in podcast form as well. So good to see you, Rob. And to all of you, a common good day to you.